Marco, for crossing all the ocean and coming here. It's a pleasure. The other day I was reading a magazine. I was looking at how companies like Google, Amazon, Netflix dig into the vast amount of user-generated data and feed that into a deep learning algorithm, and essentially that is converting itself giving them exponential growth. So, on the other hand, I've seen many organizations who have been historically tapping into a large amount of data but never have done anything about it. And I have seen BBVA, from working with you guys in so long, detaching from the rest and making interesting inroads into using that data to create new revenue streams and to empower a digital transformation. So I would like to start. How do you start a revolution like that in a bank, and how did it go so far?
It's been a while. Is this working? Yeah. It's been a while already. It's not from one year to the other. Trying to understand what value we had within the data, we started about 5 years ago. But the first stage that we needed to do at that point was convince the rest of the organization that there was actual value in the data. So we had a whole year, that was 2013, that I called it the buying credibility year, where we did very, very minor projects, but with high impact in the organization. And if you know banks, it's not that difficult to have high impact in the organization. I mean, it's not low-hanging fruit. The fruit is on the floor all over the place. And we had some very, very good results on that year. And those results resulted in a very key element in the data journey, which is top-level support. The chairman is absolutely behind us. And the reason I say this is needed is because the start is easy, that buying credibility, doing some projects, gathering some data, doing some experiments, even putting a couple of things in production. But the whole journey involves much more than that. It is a whole cultural, the data-driven journey, to call it one way, it's a cultural transformation. And that transformation is the tough one, right? About a couple of weeks ago, I was in Barcelona, where I live, and I was heading to a branch to get some money. And I was thinking in the way about the stupid transformation, all the time the transformation, what do I do now, and how do I train my people in Colombia, or these kind of things, right? And when I get into the bank, I see 2 posters. And both posters were different products. And that was all the products that were promoted in the bank. And they're promoted all over Spain right now. And those 2 products were big data products that came out of the team. So when I went into the branch, I said, wow, the transformation is already here. I mean, there's already things that we can touch and that are providing value to our customers with data. So we have that good sensation, knowing that there's a lot more to do if we want to change the organization.
So we have grown to have IT as one of the most risk-averse cultures in the organization. I'm ashamed to say that coming from an IT background. How do you start making that transformation when I understand you must democratize the access to the data? How do you go about that?
Well, banks are more risk-averse than IT. So it's not easy. And it is challenging. The easiest way, or at least the path we took, was we need to show the value first before starting any kind of transformation. And it was interesting because in showing the value, we started seeing some impact in the business. A couple of years ago, when we had a meeting, and I had prepared for each one of the 18 large big data projects that we had open, I had prepared a study on the business impact of each one of those projects. And each one of the projects could have paid my team over 20 years, the business impact of each one. So we had 8 times 20, 360 years to live just because of the impact of the projects.
Wow.
Went to the chairman says, know what, I'm tired of these projects. You know, I was very proud of the whole year's work, millions in impact for the bank. He was tired of the projects. What he wanted was precisely what you're saying, to transform the culture within the bank. What you need to do is not go to the risk guys and do a new scoring for the risk guys. You need to teach the risk guys how to design their new scoring. And that's where the real tough work started. And we had to change completely the focus. We had to continue focusing on projects and business impact, but we had to start focusing much more on communities of practice, training, on the experience side, on the product development side, and so forth. So we had to change the north.
What kind of trainings did you have to do to make that cultural shift?
The first training we did was, it's called From Data Miner to Data Science. Banks have about 300 data miners. BBVA has about 300 strong data miners. You know, BBVA, for those who don't know, about 35 banks, and a dozen of those are large, 65 million customers. Most of the footprint is very overlapped with Globant's footprint. It's most Latin America, a little bit in the United States, Turkey, Spain. So each one of these countries have large business intelligence and customer intelligence units with these data miner profiles, and we needed to change and shift their mindset. So we designed a 4-month, very intensive training, 4 months, and then 2 months on working on concrete projects, and what we call the concrete headaches they could bring them to the training. So 2 things about the training that I think, first of all, over 100 data miners already did the training. Over 1/3 of the banks, and this we started 2 years ago, of the bank's employees did that training. So this is really changing the culture. In which way is it changing the culture? I think the most important one is that the analysts within organizations, they're used to being a service. The business intelligence, the customer intelligence, they're used to being people the product guy goes and said, how my product doing? Should I launch a campaign? What's the propensity model for this? Or, you know, do these reports. I want monthly reports on how many mortgages people are. This is the way of working. The main shift is that now they are in the digital world, they're an integral part of product development. The business analysts within each of the banks, the data miners, as data scientists, they participate in product development. That never happened before, and that's a major shift in the organization. And the second thing I like about this training is that in total we did about 10, you know, we do it by groups, about 10 projects. When they gather by groups when the training finishes, they choose a topic that is their major headache, like in risk, whatever, or in client segmentation or anti-money laundering algorithm, and they focus on that topic together with the Center of Excellence, with BBVA Data and Analytics, with our data scientists. And they focus on that topic. Of the 10 topics that we did, about 5 or 4 actually are in production in the bank. So that's a huge measure of success for me of the training, because it's resulting in clear business impact from day one.
Can you share with us some of the examples? I know we've been working on many. Some of the examples of how you can create solutions when you move out of just purely transactional data on your bank account and you are able to make sense out of more people's data?
Banks are famous for underutilizing the data they have. The data in the bank is at the creepy level. When you go inside the bank, and you're a data guy like me, and you go inside the bank and you realize what banks know about the customers, it's like the Mafia. I know where you live. I know what school you send your children to. I know, for all the companies, inferring income and expenses is machine learning. Facebook spends $150 million to infer the income and expense of its user from the likes and from your behavior online. For me, it's a SQL query. No machine learning there, right? So this, and banks have done nothing, absolutely nothing with this. So the first place where we started, first of all, so the first thing we realized when we started with this, we said, we're going to bring data from everywhere. We're going to bring telco data and the social network data. And And we realized that we were not even using all the bank's data. So the first part of the path was to use better all the data that we had from our customers. And a lot of the things we're leveraging right now, which are having concrete impact, is using better that data. And then for using external data for customers is tough because of privacy protection, et cetera, laws. So that's not simple. First thing you realize is there's a lot you can do without resorting to individual identifiable data. There's a ton you can do already with that, and we did a lot of work with that. And the second thing you realize is that banks have a lot of more customers than the individuals. There's small and medium businesses and companies, and data protection legislation does not apply within these sectors. So you can do a bunch, you can help them a lot by completing the data you have of them with publicly available data or data from other sources. And we have some very nice projects. Right now, the bank, thanks to some of these projects, is giving 4% more credit at 0% more default rate, completely changing the way we're relating with small and medium businesses. When a new non-client goes inside an office, we set up something like similar to the Facebook social graph, but for small and medium businesses in Spain. So you know everything about that business the minute that person steps into, the minute that business steps into your office. So, and that's thanks to our data, but since they're not clients, it's especially thanks to external data.
Yeah. And now one of the things that you need to deal with is, of course, privacy. How do you deal with that?
I mean, the privacy, I'm always asked this question. In privacy, you know who doesn't deal well with privacy? People. Yeah, we're the worst at managing our privacy. The second who don't deal well with privacy, governments. Governments are, if they can do something wrong with privacy, except, heavily, certain types of governance, they will. I was reading this morning about what's it called, the social scoring of China. No, 2020, every single Chinese citizen will have a social scoring that will be made up from your online behavior, from your financial behavior, and that social scoring will tell you if you will be able to receive a credit or if you will be able to fly first class to Eli, right? In China. Right? That's privacy concerns. Banks, we love privacy. It's a differentiator for us, and we know how to do it. We know we build the business on trust. I know people don't like banks, but they do trust banks. I mean, and that's what we won't put that in danger because of a funky business model, which is advertisement, which is 1/10 of our current market size. So banks are very serious about privacy.
How do you see data playing a role into enhancing the overall consumer journey? How can you make it better by tapping into this data? I know you're working a lot on decision making and
data. If you abstract this, data works in two ways, and this is very simplified. It either enables better decisions, and this is kind of straightforward. You have more information, you can take better decisions. I mean, there's companies that the more information they have, they take worse decisions, but that's because data is a burden for them, and that's where one needs to help. So, but if you're doing a good job, if you have more data, you take better decisions. That's number one, and that works inwards. We take better decisions. We decide whether to give you a loan or not if we have more data. So we take better decisions. But the interesting thing is we can help our customers take better decisions because we know about their financial data, we can advise, we can make their life simple, so we can use data for our customers to take better decisions. And the second layer is eliminating decisions. And I think this is the interesting one, okay? Where Andy was talking about the frictionless experience. And a frictionless experience, it is deciding what not to show. And deciding what not to show doesn't mean you eliminate it altogether. You just forget about it, but that you automate it in some way or another, okay? And data has a huge role in not only enhancing or improving the decisions you make, but taking away decisions from you. So if I want to show you a clean screen with exactly you want, I need the data to decide what I take away from that screen.
How do you see artificial intelligence taking a...
There's all this buzz about artificial intelligence. It's a tough one. And the truth is that there's a lot of confusion right now about what artificial intelligence is and what its scope can be. I mean, people are talking about conversational interfaces or chatbots or these kind of interpretations of artificial intelligence. What I like to do when thinking about what we're doing with respect to artificial intelligence is think what a financial intelligence is. Right? And a financial intelligence is precisely what we were talking about, is somebody who I will go and he will understand me, he will know me, he will know if I'm risk averse or not, he will know if I trust that entity or not, and he will recommend and he will advise me on what to do. He will take care of things for me without me knowing, and if I trust, that will be peace of mind for me. That's what encompasses an artificial intelligence. And that's what we need to, an intelligence, not necessarily artificial. That what encompasses a good financial advisor, for instance. So we need to put that inside a machine. And that's much more complex than just a chatbot, right? Definitely. It's understanding trust, privacy, risk aversity.
Well, you're talking about perhaps this automatic decision making and being contextual being the key to be omni-relevant, as Martin was putting it this morning.
Yes, exactly.
To be relevant
things away, banks have to provide peace of mind. This is an interesting topic because it touches on another one that we were discussing with the aviation folks, which is experience. Right? Banks have to get their act together on what kind of experience they want to provide to the clients. Right? There's one example. We were doing some metrics on the apps, on the online apps of the bank. And somebody decided that the time people spent on the app was great. I mean, the more time, the better, right, for a bank. They just extrapolated that from YouTube or Facebook or whoever, that the more time is better. And as Esther Dyson says, banks should be like a vacuum cleaner. The less time I spend with it, better, right? So it was the inverse metric, and that's the reason for this. So we were measuring it wrong. I mean, we were measuring bad customer experience. And the reason for this confusion is because I think we still have not gotten our arms around what experience we want to provide as banks to the customers. Where do we focus? Do we focus on simplicity, on seamlessness, on peace of mind, on risk, on an adventure? But we need to get and each bank will have a different answer to that, and it's good. Now, the key part here is that I cannot do this, as the data guy, I cannot do this by myself. I need to work together with the design folks in order to do this. And this is a very large change in the organization that I see is coming, and that I see that it's the only right way to go into the AI field. Designers with data scientists.
Yeah, that's a complete transformation. And during the course of the years, I've seen you in different roles. I remember when I first met you, you were on an innovation palace. It was like isolated area for innovation, then creating a spin-off, BBVA Data, then being at the core of the bank, trying to make every decision be taken as much as possible automatically. So what did you learn during the process around how to drive innovation on a very large organization like BBVA?
Yeah, innovation has changed its role within organizations very drastically in the last years. And just 10 years ago or 15 years ago, innovation was something that is unknown. And when you have to bring new talent, a new kind of thinking in the organization, the best way is to bring it in centralized. So this is why innovation, there was a chief innovation officer. That figure practically does not exist right now. That's why, because we started with our analytics center of excellence, and it is a centralized organization because we need to bring that talent. Now the challenge, that transformation that we were talking about, is to start radiating from that, right? So the next stage in innovation we have seen is that every single business unit and their mothers, they have a kind of innovation lead, and they have their own practices in innovation, and that is good, and that is good. But still, it has the counterpart that it is siloed, it is difficult to acquire talent, and it happens within the business unit. What I see as the next step within innovation, if you look at large corporations, it has to emanate from the human resources department in many ways. So I see it in two things. Number one, emanating from human resources, because it has to go at the basic cultural level. You know, what is the culture? What is the identity of the bank? What people we bring in? What is the careers for those people? These kind of thoughts. And the other place I see it happening is banks, as many other organizations, need to think of themselves as software development organizations, no longer banks. And this means that basically you need to have this stupid separation between technology and business. Doesn't make sense anymore. Doesn't make sense. And you need to think that product organization needs, that's the value arises, the creation arises from that product organization, and within that product organization, you need to have people dealing with experience, and that is design and data, and I see that design and data will be one and the same department in 5 years from now, and the second one is you need to have people doing engineering and software development, and then you have to have the business expertise. And that has to be within one organization, no longer 4 separate organizations for each one of these.
So essentially teamwork and transform by doing.
Absolutely.
Okay. So we have time for, I would say, 2 questions from the audience.
Marco, this is very much an e-issue, but I need to ask it because I have the opportunity to ask it right now. The ATM has not changed since 1978, pretty much, right? I go in, I do my little thing. Banks have all this data on me. All my banks, they know exactly my patterns. Is there a reason why this part of the world has, this part of the banking, touch point has not changed, has not transformed at all?
From an experience standpoint, it's because it's mainly satisfying the same need that the day it was created, right? All the other experience that we have built around ATMs pale to cash extraction, okay? So this is number one reason. The need is the same. But then the other important thing is that, and this is for 99% of the banks, the data from the ATM is in server A, and the data from the branches is in server B, and the data from the call centers is in server C, and the data from the digital experience, app 1 is in server D1, and app 2 is in server D2. So until you have all that data together, forget about omnichannel. That's a lie. Okay? Start having, when people say, we have an omnichannel experience in the bank, oh, you have a data repository, a data lake, what's that? Oh, then you don't have an omnichannel experience.
So from your massive experience on data, what would be your recommendation on starting to teach an organization to adapt, be flexible, agile, and change? So prepare for the change, especially coming from a bank.
Thank you, Sabina. It's my experience of massive data. It's not the other way around. So I think that you need to tackle at all these fronts. I think I mentioned them separately. Number one, the unleashing data. You need to start breaking down all the barriers between data and the bank. Still, we, as Guibert says, we're pretty much advanced. We're doing a good job. 80% of my time is breaking down data barriers in the bank. And that cannot happen. That's still number one. Show value, show concrete value, so you have leadership support. Because the day you start asking for budget for retraining your whole organization, which is the actual transformation, if you don't have that top leadership support, that won't happen. okay? And then that part, the cultural train. Instead of building a center, build a network, right? If you want your organization to leverage data, build a network that is capable of organizing data and communicating between themselves on all the knowledge that is built around that data, okay? And look at Netflix, look at Spotify. That's the way they work. Look at Facebook. That's the way they work. When they have a problem, it's an engineering calling another engineering. How you do this? How do you do this query? Where's this data located? We still, in these very vertical, very pyramidal organizations, we still struggle with that. You know, I have we have that one minute?
Yeah.
I have a nice story, which is, I tried to build that network initially, connecting the different customer intelligence teams in Colombia and Peru and Argentina and stuff. And I said, you need to talk, you guys to talk and tell you what your problems are. Okay? So one would say, oh, I have a problem of customer segmentation and I'm doing this and that. And the Mexican would go, oh, we did that. We've been there. We did that 3 years ago. Okay? And it was, when the discussion was about business, there was this competition in the air. So I put it apart, pulled it all apart, and I said, look, the bosses, the directors of these organizations can no longer participate here. Only the technical people can go there and tell their experiences. So the technical people started, and you guys own this, by the way. The data scientists, the data miner in every one of the countries, they own this. I mean, maybe for an IT organization like Globant, this is not new, but for a bank, this is new. You know, owned by the engineers or the statisticians. So instead of talking about the new segmentation and the value for the wealth customers, they would say, oh, I have a Bayesian network that I trained on this particular set of customers. Really? Why didn't you try with this other approach? So the discussion that was at the business level started taking place at the technical level. And when the discussion takes place at the technical level, everybody wants to share. When the discussion is at the business level, sharing is more difficult. Okay? And that was a huge change in terms of knowledge sharing across the organization.
Well, thank you, Marco. We're running out of time, but thank you very much for
Thanks to you.
sharing all this valuable experience.
My pleasure.